This miniature was primed with an airbrush using Vallejo's black primer. The tops of the brown feathers were then base coated with a mild brown and the bottom side with a dark brown. For the white feathers, I base coated the bottom portion with a dark blue and the upper portion with a lighter blue before slowly highlighting with the white ink. I still want to maintain a lot of blue in the feathers. For the talons and beak, I base coat with a mustard yellow before hitting the flames with a red and orange. As a mild spoiler, I royally fail on the flames for multiple reasons, and this is where I made the first mistakes for them, but more on that later. Once at my desk, I mix a quick oil wash and apply this all over the eagle. Because I didn't varnish at all, I was a little concerned that the thinner would eat away at the delicate inks, but that was mercifully not an issue. After letting the oil set for 45 minutes to an hour, I came back with a sponge that was lightly moistened with thinner, and gently wiped away the excess oil. From there, I moved on to highlighting the feathers, using an old brush and adding some edge highlights and diagonal lines following the shapes of the feathers. At this point, I wasn't worried about having fine lines. Once I got to the second highlight, this is where I transitioned to a better brush and focused on having finer lines, and ensuring that I didn't entirely cover the previous highlight with this new one. For highlighting the white feathers, I followed a similar approach. I added a light blue as a highlight for the bottom half of what will be the white areas, and then a highlight of an off-white for the upper half. I then came back with a pure white and added edge and tip highlights to the feathers on the upper parts. Highlighting the feathers is where I spent the vast majority of my time on this project, and it took up over half of the 8 hours that I committed. The Talons continued this basic highlighting approach with a highlight of a mustardy yellow and then a second highlight of the same yellow mixed with the same off-white used on the white feathers. I was originally just going to use a lighter yellow out of the bottle, but since I already have those colors on the palette, that's one less bottle of paint that I need to pull out. The Talons themselves was just a quick base coat of black followed by a mix of black with the off-white that's already on my palette. I then follow that with the final highlight of that same off-white. And while I still have that off-white on my brush, I move next to the bands around its neck and ankles, base coating the sections without the circular rounded relief. I then highlight the upwards facing sides with pure white. I carefully pick out the red sections next, base coating with a darker red and then highlighting the upwards facing half with a lighter red. For the blue circular reliefs, this went by quickly as I just base coated it with the dark blue and then gently dry brushing the lighter blue on top. I head back outside after realizing that I should have started lighter with the fire and then adding the darker colors to the areas furthest from the center of the flames, which would be the hottest part. So I rebase coat it in white. I allow this to overspray some on the creature it's burning before hitting it with yellow ink. I then come in with some orange and red inks to add some color to the areas further away from the center of the flame. While the flames are drying, I add some violet to the lower parts of the creature on the ground before giving it a zenithal spray of dark green and a highlight of a light green ink. I then add a pink as a highlight to the purple areas. I finished the airbrush work for the last time with some black ink on the flames. This was another mistake and I'll explain a little later. Back at my desk, I'm still very unhappy with how the flames look and I'm not exactly sure why yet, so I start with adding some white ink in the recesses. While the white ink dries, I multitask and add an oil wash to the body on the grounded creature before returning to add yellow ink to the flames. While the yellow ink dries, I gently remove the excess oil from the grounded creature. I add some final highlights to the creature with an orange, green, pink, and off-white to their respective color families. Still unhappy with the flames, I add some red to ease the transitions of the yellow, and it looks a little better, but for the life of me I couldn't figure out why. But it's 3 a.m. on July 4th and I want this video to make it out for the US holiday and I'm out of time, so... Here's where I stopped on this project. Normally I start with the things that I like, but that. I'm very unhappy with the flames and it wasn't until I was editing the video to post it that I realized why. The main problem I have is I shouldn't have used nearly as much black as I did. Black is for smoke, and while there may be a little, especially towards the bottom where the creature and ground is literally cooking, the vast majority of this should be yellow, with a good amount of orange and a little red. It should resemble more like a flamethrower. Less smoke, more flame. This is a great example of why using reference art or pictures is important, and something that I already should be doing. So there's no excuse for this catastrophic failure on my part. Also, if you paid close attention to my second run with the airbrush, you'll notice bubbling in the well. This is a backflow created by me not having cleaned my airbrush well enough after the previous time I used it. That is a no-no. Now with that self-chastisement out of the way, let me get to the things that I actually like. Not that it came out amazing, but I was happy with how much I forced myself to use the airbrush, particularly on the mutant abomination thing's arm that's clutched between the great bird's talons. Forcing myself out of my comfort zone with the airbrush can only be a good thing. Though I use blue as a shade for white anyway, I try to subtly add the white, red, and blue of the colors into the miniature, with the blue being a shade for white, red OSL on the yellow claws, ground, and under the wings, as well as white on the feathers, to help add a little more representation of the stars and bars along with the blatant colors on the collar and anklets. Now, you may be asking what the hell does this miniature from a sci-fi game set in the Wild West have to do with America? Well, first, Wild West, America. Second, giant bald eagle breathing fire on its enemies. I mean, come on, it don't get much more American than that. And with that, that'll bring this video to its end. I hope you learned something or inspired to start or expand your own collection of symbols of patriotism, raining death down upon its enemies like rain, only more. If you have any questions, feel free to ask, and if you like the content of this video and would like to see more, you can easily support the channel by liking, commenting, sharing, and subscribing. I'm Jim with Working with Miniatures. I'm truly grateful for your time, and I bid you a fond farewell. Until the next video.